great. And so because country music is very much about radio play, and it's all about the song, and it's that's really the primary focus of country music. We're going to spend this next session really getting into the songwriting, into production, into radio, that kind of thing. So first I just want to, I know that some of you have introduced yourselves a few times now, but if we could just maybe go down the line and just briefly say your name, and your job or your company, then we will get started into the thick of things.
Hello, I'm Emily. I am a songwriter based in Nashville, originally from Toronto.
Hi, I'm Carla Hackman. I'm with Sakamoto Agency, a national agency, predominantly country.
Hi, my name is Mike Denney. I'm the president of MDM Recordings, a country label and artist management company out of Toronto.
Hi, I'm Anna Weisband, and I work at This Music Publishing, which is a joint venture of Warner Chappell in Nashville.
I'm Amber Bell, and my official title, I think, is Manager of National Promotions at Open Road Recordings, and which basically means I do all of the radio promotion for the roster on Open Road Recordings.
Awesome. So perfect mix of people to talk about this. When we're just going to get right into the songwriting portion, and I just want to talk about how most hit songs are written. How many people are on the project? What is that process like from what you're familiar with that's getting a lot of radio play?
I guess it can really happen in a lot of different ways, but I'll just say how my most recent experiences have been over the past number of years. Most of my co-writing sessions are usually 3 people, and it's either myself and an artist and a person who is often referred to as a track person or a producer who's making the demo in real time as we're writing the song, or it's myself, a track person, and another professional writer. And in those cases, we're writing a song for a pitch. But if we're writing with the artist, the goal is to write a song that artist would then record.
So when you're writing a pitch song, can you just explain what that is for people who aren't sure?
So, sometimes if we're working with somebody whose publisher says, Little Big Town is looking for a song, maybe you would go in and try to actually write a song based on what your concept of Little Big Town is and what their brand is, who they are as an artist, and try to target a song that you think they would record. I don't know how often it happens that you actually do that and it actually lines up. In my experience, I've written songs. One example I'll say is I co-wrote Brett Kissel's song Anthem with Karen Kozowski and Phil Barton. And we literally just got together that day, and it was like Karen had this track idea, I had this concept, and we wrote this song, and it just so happened that Phil's publisher pitched it to Brett without us knowing, and then he decided to record it. So it was completely random. We didn't have Brett in mind. It just happened that way. Maybe you can add to that as well.
Yeah. So my company, we're set up, and telling you how my company kind of works helps answer this question a little bit better. But so our company set up, we have 14 songwriters that me and the owner named Rusty Gaston, we and a couple other people that work for us, we manage them every day and strategize their basically we do everything for them, so they just have to worry about writing a song. And most of them are set up as they write every single day. We were talking about it earlier, not 9 to 5 because they can't get up there that early. I can't either, but every day, a 9 to 5 job. It's their job. They come in there. They write a song every day. Totally, like you said, the structure with a lot of them is a producer in the room, that they love that. Some of them sometimes they need just a craftsman day, we call them, when it's just 2 songwriters. And they're not worried about a producer or an artist or any of that stuff. It's just stripped down, this is the point of writing songs. We're just going to write a song today. And so some of them target right, like you said, some of them do. We just did a camp. A lot of our writers have had some big Blake Shelton songs. So we just did it. Blake's about to do a record. So we did a whole week of 6 writers who have all had huge Blake songs. And they're the Blake professionals, we call them, to pump them up a little bit. And then they just target wrote for Blake all week long. And so they got like 13 or 14 target songs that we can then send as a package to him. So sometimes we do that kind of stuff, but usually it's just like their goal every day. We try to make it very just they have nothing else on their mind except like writing a song and like what they can write that day and what's the best thing that they can create that day. So that's kind of how we're set up, and that's how it works best for them, how they work and stuff.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask a few questions. I'm gonna ask some questions like based on the songwriter perspective, and others based on the artist perspective. So after what you had said, Anna, when the songwriters are writing songs and they're writing one every day, what happens to those songs? Do you just take them and put them in a file for like songs about like breakups, or how does that work?
Yeah, not really, honestly. Like, we have reached the point, like some companies keep like a pitch log, you know, so like, you know, where you have sent songs before and stuff like that. We kind of don't, because sometimes it takes like 2 or 3 times for the same A&R person to hear one song. Like, it's totally happened before where I've sent it to somebody, they've passed on it, they don't like it, and then Rusty, the owner, sends them, and then it's on hold, and then it gets cut. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, sometimes they just need to hear it multiple times. Like, they're people too, so like they may be like not liking a certain thing one day, or, you know, so we don't do that kind of on purpose. So we can kind of just be like fearless and get it out there. If we believe that it's still meant to be there, even if they pass, we'll just go for it again, maybe with a different angle. But basically, when they write these songs every day, we get them demoed like all the time, and then our writers kind of work like machines. They just like get them done, and then they put them in our hands, and then we take them, and we always know what's going on. Like, for a publisher like me, it's like information is just like key, you know, to know where everyone's projects are at, what they need, like what they're feeling, where they're at emotionally. Like, are they in love? Like, did they just break up with someone? You know, like, it's kind of like invasive that I know where all the artists' love lives are. But it's kind of helpful because, you know, if, you know, a female artist is in love, or if their heart was just broken. My sister has some really great heartbreak songs because she likes when people break her heart. So, you know, so it's like kind of helpful to know that, but that's my job to know like what they're gonna respond to. And so then when we get the songs in, it's just like plan of attack. Like, we sit down as a staff and listen, and then just like attack it, kind of like that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Very cool. All right, so if there's an artist who's looking to write a great song with writers who have a little more experience with them and some credibility, what's the best way for them to seek out those writers and to get them in a room?
I think just being fearless. I mean, I think even at every level of being an artist or every level of being a songwriter, there's still always someone a little bit above where you believe your place to be. So even when you've had some success, there's still that other person above you who's had like 10 Grammys, and you're like, I want to write with that person. But I think just sending your music and being professional. Whether that's like finding them through email. Like, I sometimes get people direct messaging me through my Instagram. I honestly don't love that. I would prefer if you found my website and sent me an email and even maybe named some songs that I wrote that you liked, instead of me feeling like you heard that maybe I write great songs and so you're just kind of randomly like stalk emailing me. Like, having a personal touch thing, I really love that thing you did, makes me feel like you actually care about me. I'm still a person. So having that personal touch to try to connect with people is still really important.
Sorry. Yes, totally. My favorite saying, piggybacking off of that. Oh my gosh, it's such like a panel like quote to say. I just felt really dumb. Piggybacking off of that. I think it's really important just to always keep like, and we've been talking about it a lot this weekend, actually, like your relationships, like key, you know, like there are some people that I don't think I'll ever work with personally as songwriters, but like if they come across my desk and I need to like speak up for them or give, you know, or someone asks me about them and we have a great relationship and they've been really kind to me and they've, you know, just worked on that relationship, like that's going to affect how I like, you know, support them or like give them a reference or send them somewhere or anything like that. So I think that's true with co-writing too, is just like plugging in and really creating actual relationships with people that can be more long-term things. You never know where you're going to run into somebody, you know, ever. So I think that's really key in getting in the rooms with the people that you want to get in with. Like, it will happen one day, and then plugging in with the people, your peers that are around you, you know, that's like so important. Like, sometimes people are like, oh, I can only write, like, if I could just get in the room with like hit songwriters, I'll be a hit songwriter. Like, I can write a hit, you know what I mean? But it's kind of like, you have to do that. Like, they had peers that they weren't where they are, you know, like overnight. So it's like you need to plug in with your peers too and develop those relationships, because hopefully your peers are going to be those people one day too, you know, and then you'll have your
you
badass
kind of
crew.
come up like a class of people.
Yeah,
like
you
wherever
totally do.
you're at, you grow together. And so it is important to just reach out to those people that are at your level. And I think that's a really good point. Like, you can't just kind of jump. You can't skip steps.
Yeah.
You have to like be good at where you're at before anyone is going to kind of accept you in that next group, whatever that is.
But still have that balance and like push yourself to get in certain rooms, and not even get in certain rooms, but have breakfast with like a writer you really admire, or like, you know, I try to do that all the time, just as like a business person, just like get to know someone who I don't know that maybe does things that I do that I respect and look up to. And, you know, like, even if you don't work with them, like, it will make you better in where you're coming from, you know?
So for musicians in Manitoba, or songwriters in Manitoba, what would you recommend to them? Because we're kind of like in the middle of nowhere. And it isn't, you know, we are like a little music city, but it isn't, you know, on the forefront of people's minds, like, oh, we're going to seek out songwriters from Manitoba. Do you have any suggestions? Should writers be traveling? Should they be going to Nashville? Should they be going to Toronto? Mike, you might even have something to say about this as well.
We send all of our artists to Nashville on a regular basis. We talked about this in the first session. I'm formulating a thought here, so I want to get this right. We said best song wins. Unfortunately, and this is not to put down the funding agencies, but we have this thing where we have to qualify with CanCon as well too, which is really tricky. My point being, if you're going to be a factor-funded artist, you need to be 51% music and lyric Canadian. And if you're getting yourselves in rooms in Nashville where you're 33%, and then you write and record your record and you're at 33% CanCon, you got to pay all that money back. And it's not fun when you get called on the mat like that. And we had it happen with Jess. So I just want to put that out there for people who are attracting government funding to really watch those percentages. We had it with Jess on her first record, and we had gotten the production grant. We had made the record. We had put out we had gotten the $20,000 production grant, a $30,000 marketing grant, a couple of showcase grants. And I got an email one day saying, upon further review, you are deemed non-CanCon. You haven't met the qualifications. The record's already out. We're on Cheap Wine and Cigarettes, which was selling 3,800 digital downloads a week. And was told I had to pay back $38,000 in 2 weeks. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And it turned out that it was a problem on their end, but it would have bankrupted our company at the time that Jess was having the biggest song of her life, which I was like, you guys shouldn't be bankrupting me and bankrupting the artist. You should take the success to Ottawa and wave the flag in terms of what she was doing. But that was a scary time. So I just want to make sure that that point is out there. As far as we solicit people like Anne all the time and Emma to either hook up co-writes with our guys when we send them down, or if we're looking for specific songs for David James, for example, we'll send an email. This is what we're looking for. Scour your vaults and send me back a link, and we'll take a listen to it. And if it fits, then we will seriously take a look at recording it. And that's what we did with Cars, Girls in the Radio. It was sent to me from Dwayne Thompson. Totally unsolicited, just like, hey, I wrote this song the other day. I think it might be right for David, and we listened to it on iPhone, and it was like, hell yeah.
So you do sometimes take, unsolicited songs for your artists? Like if someone reaches out and is like, I think this is really suitable for so and so, that works.
The other point, and Amber can probably talk about this as well too, is, and it is getting a little bit better, is it's really hard to get a 100% Canadian written song on the radio. Really, really hard. I can think of Dean Brody being the only current one who can get on. They want that Nashville piece. So you got to keep that in mind when you're writing, if your goal is to chase the radio stations as well too. I don't know why it's like that, but it's like as a Canadian citizen, you're second class in terms of your writing abilities, which I totally disagree with. But as soon as you mention the word Nashville, everything changes.
It's a brand, right?
Yeah.
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 Do you have anything to
I
comment?
think just in terms of you're saying, like, do writers in Manitoba have to go to Toronto or have to go to Nashville? I don't know if you guys have heard of this podcast called And the Writer Is. It's really great. You should check it out if you haven't heard of it. But there's this one episode where Ross Golan, who's the host, interviews Ryan Tedder. And in it, he said, go to the place where people are doing the thing that you want to do. And, I mean, it seems so obvious. But, I mean, I only moved to Nashville 2 years ago. I was in Toronto writing songs and getting cuts. But it really changed when I moved to Nashville. And I think when you go there, you get a masterclass in songwriting, regardless of what level you think you were at. You really are competing with world-class writers, and it makes you so much better. So you don't have to, but when I heard him say those words, it just made so much sense to me.
With Nashville being so competitive and so many people are moving there every single day, how do you go there and build this network? And when is the right time then? If there's people who are thinking, yeah, that's where I want to go, do you just go there on a whim, or did you spend a few years developing relationships and then being like, now is the time?
I actually only went to Nashville for the first time in 2011, and I had been going to Nashville and LA on writing trips, and I knew that I wanted to relocate to one of those cities, and I've been writing country and pop. For whatever reason, I started having more success in the country world as a songwriter, so I just kind of continued to chase that. And Nashville is such a great city where, like, it isn't just country music anymore. You can do so many different things. So it felt like the right fit for me. And it was at a time when I was starting to get enough cuts that I was able to do it and, you know, be in a situation where I was financially sound, which can be tricky when you're first starting out. How do you move to a new city as a Canadian with nothing, with no income, and you're not allowed to just go get a job in the US? It's not that easy. So I think you'll know when it's starting to get to that right time, or just start taking the trips, and that will kind of organically happen over time. You'll meet people, and it'll lead you on your own way.
Yeah, 1 sec.
Thank you. How does that work for songwriters then as far as working visas? Because one of the questions is, as you go through immigration, are you going down to work? Well, you're going down to songwrite. You don't know whether you're going to...
Okay, so forever, I never told people that I was going down to songwrite because customs, they don't understand how that works. And to explain it to them is really strange. Because no one is paying you to songwrite when you go to Nashville. No one is actually being like, here's $100 for writing the song. You might make money later, but it is going to come back to you through like SoCan. It is going to come back to you through a Canadian means. So you're not doing anything illegal, but they don't understand how that works. One recommendation I do have is that you can get a B1 visa, which is a visa that will allow you to songwrite in Nashville for up to 6 months in a year. You're not allowed to do any other work under it, but it'll at least give you this piece of paper when you get to the border that's like, here's my like plan of my itinerary of activities that I'm going to be doing for 6 months. If you feel nervous about crossing the border and telling them that you're a songwriter, I would just recommend getting that visa. It's really cheap. I think it was like $70 or something like that. B1, yeah. It's like a business visa where you're conducting business but not actually making money.
So music industry.
So basically, you're part of the music industry.
Okay, I'm just trying to think of where I'm at now. Oh, perfect.
If we wanted to book, as a singer-songwriter, wanted to book a trip down to Nashville to do a bunch of co-writes, how much in advance would we have to reach out to writers? Because I assume that you're already booked up for a certain length of time.
Yeah, I think it really varies. Everyone's different. I'm usually booking like 2 months in advance, but
Okay.
I will leave a couple of days open for those. You never know when an artist just like happens to be coming to town, and then, you know, someone like Mike or a label or a manager could reach out and say, hey, so-and-so's in town this week. Do you have anything open? And then you're just like happy that you left that afternoon or whatever it is. But I mean, 2 months is a decent amount of time.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And on that as well, does anyone ever reach out to you, Anna, about like, hey, I'm coming out to Nashville and I want to write with some of the people that you have? Is that a thing that happens?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah,
All the
okay.
time. And you know, my company, we have like a level of songwriters that they're just a really high level. Like my sister Emily is probably the most developing songwriter, the newest songwriter we have, and she's really has great things going. So sometimes it's hard to get in with that level. Like I'm looking for more developing people, because those are the ones that you can really dig in with and develop and form other relationships with other levels of songwriters. But sometimes like I don't have anything for them to actually like a write or a session to put together, but I can meet with them, or, you know, make a suggestion for one thing about Nashville that I love. Now I work in LA a lot or other places, but everyone wants to help each other, and genuinely, usually. And I do. And so if I have a suggestion of somebody else that I think that would be, you know, work well, I'll suggest that. Or you can come in, or you can send me a link of music so I can just be aware of what you do. And then if anything comes across, like, it happens all the time. And I love it, you know.
I think from a label and management point of view, the Nashville community is really opening up to the Canadian industry a lot more in the last little while. So you see people like Anna and other publishing companies making an effort now to come to the CCMAs to meet with Canadian artists when they're down there and schedule it. And that's because it's so competitive in the U.S. market to get cuts and all the rest of that stuff that I don't know if this is true, but I think I've heard it before. And if you can get a cut in Canada that generates a top 10, there's about $40,000 to $50,000 in revenue that's generated from that. That could cover the advance of a writer for the year. So what we're finding now is that the quality of songs that we're accessing, all of us as Canadians, is way higher than what it was when I first started 10 years ago. We would get brutal songs, and it was the best that we were going to get. And that's been a major change, and that's fueled the competitiveness of what's going on at radio right now, which Amber can probably speak to. It's crazy out there what's going on. It's amazing. It's a great problem to have, but I don't think it's for the long term of our industry. We need to be able to continue developing talent, and right now it is ridiculously hard to break through developing artist talent because it's just so competitive out there. I think Amber can probably speak to it on the radio side better than I can.
Yeah, I mean, right now, the number one comment, or if you want to say complaint that you hear from programmers is there's just too much that's viable. And they only have so many spots. And right now, the spots that they have to add your music to is reflective of what Mike was talking about when, you know, our song choices that were coming our way were, you know, a lot less. In a competitive sense, when they're trying to look at adding your song next to Blake Shelton or, you know, Old Dominion or whoever else is on the playlist that you've got to match with. So knowing that that's all coming, radio stations are still, you know, kind of doing things the way that they were before, and we're just churning stuff out, developing more and more labels are in the game now, developing artists have access to people like Anna and Emily in Nashville. And they said the Canadian community in Nashville alone is becoming so strong and so supportive. So I'm looking forward to the day where, you know, things open up a little more at our format at radio. But we just, you know, I don't think anyone's going to stop. We're just going to keep building the format from our side.
Not to get off topic, but it kind of lends itself to the CanCon conversation. I have a love-hate relationship with CanCon. I love it because it gives our opportunities for the developing artists that get a deal, the opportunity to be considered seriously at radio. It's killing our top-end artists, though, because we can't compete with the international artists on the same spin level. So a Canadian heavy song is getting 30 to 35 spins a week. An international song is getting 60 to 70. We'll never develop our star system the way that we need to when we're hitting a barrier. There are a few radio stations and more that are now considering moving Canadian artists into international heavy rotation, which is awesome, but it's not enough. And I'm, again, it's like the success and the popularity of this genre right now, we're killing ourselves, which is really scary for me, really scary. And I don't know how you change that, because you can't. If you increase CanCon, you're then taking away from 33 to 30 to 40% of U.S. artists that you can't get on the radio in Canada. And that's the pushback from the radio side of things, is they can't play a lot of the bands that are bubbling under because of the 35% CanCon that they have to play in Canada. It's tricky. It's really tricky. And I don't know how to change that. I have no idea how to change that. If you take it away, potentially the bottom end falls right out of the country music, or any genre for that matter, falls right out. So you won't have an opportunity to get on. But if you increase it, then it actually creates more competition. Catch-22. I just want one of these girls to give me a massive hit, and then I can retire.
So how does that work when, like, an artist, say it's like more of an emerging artist, and they work with some songwriters or like a publishing house or whatever, and there's a song that they want or they want to cut. Do you ever say like no because that artist isn't established enough, or do they ever pay like upfront for it, or how does that work?
Yeah, we really never say no to a cut, really. And we don't pay people up front to cut our songs. It's totally free to cut our songs. But yeah, I mean, I think like when songs come in, you know, like what level that song is. Like if it's a total Blake Shelton, absolute huge song, like it's going to go to Blake, and then we're going to circulate those circles before anything. Like you have to prioritize like where you pitch songs, like because these are like, you know, our writers' babies, you know, you have to kind of like treat them with some like respect and honor. But also like we know like if something, and Rusty and I were talking about it the other day, it's like good songs just don't do it anymore for these artists. You know, like our writers are amazing. They're some of the most amazing blue chip songwriters in Nashville. But if they're good songs, like these artists, Kenny Chesney can't cut a good song anymore. You know, like he could like cut maybe just a good song he loved to put on his record and it was great, but like no, like it have to be like next level, everything amazing about the song. So that honestly opens up a lot of because there are songs that I love. Like I love coming up to Canada at the CCMAs to play like some of my favorite songs that just haven't gotten cut by the people that I thought should have totally cut them. You know what I mean? So it really, like, I love coming up here and getting to know these artists because now I can have like a outlet for these songs that are amazingly crafted songs and amazing songs, but they just haven't connected with one of our artists down there.
And I think that's one of the biggest changes that I've seen in Nashville when I first started doing this, and it was an artist from Winnipeg that I was working with years ago, and we cut a bunch of songs from a publishing company, went in, recorded them, put the record out, and then we were told we didn't have the rights to the song because a U.S. artist wanted the track. And I'm like, yeah, but here's the email saying that we have the song on hold. Yeah. And it was like, we don't care, we're taking it to the U.S. artist. And it happened to be Eli Young, and it was Crazy, I think it was. What was one of the first hits that they had. That doesn't happen anymore because everybody made such a stink about it in terms of just the hard costs, because we weren't reimbursed for the costs that we had spent to record, and then we lost the song on top of that.
Ouch.
That has never happened with me. We try to be pretty respectful.
Okay.
I've seen it all too. Like there isn't much we haven't seen.
Bragger.
Right. We've talked a lot about writing. Does anyone have any more questions in terms of like the songwriting itself before I move on? Okay. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of production. So once the song is written, everybody's shaking hands, it's all good, and this artist wants to cut it. How important, is recording in a home studio good enough, or like how important is the production in getting on the radio or even getting on streaming playlists, when in such a competitive market?
Crucial. And that's been the biggest knock in Canadian country, was that our production just sounded Canadian and didn't sound like Nashville. Fortunately, the technology has allowed us to be able to record now at a higher level and record almost anywhere as well too, which has helped the overall sound. But and then just Nashville embracing Canada. When you listen to the top Canadian artists now and compare them against the U.S., you can't tell. Where years ago, you just knew it was Canadian. You just knew because it sounded shitty. And that's not the way that it is anymore. But it is crucial to getting on the radio.
Yeah, that'll be one of the first things that a programmer, when they play your song in their music meeting, is going to listen for. If your production is just that little bit off of what the rest of their playlist is, because at the end of the day, they want a seamless, smooth playlist. Everything production-wise needs to be the same. So like I said earlier, we're talking the top line. So it's 100% crucial.
Is it necessary to go, to travel for that? Should artists be going to Nashville to record? Should they be going to even Toronto to record? Or is it just really a matter of like finding a great studio and a great producer and just recording anywhere now?
Oh boy. Can you turn the cameras off for a second? You're seeing more and more artists record in Nashville now. Some of our artists do that, but some of our artists are also bringing Nashville producers up to Canada to record as well too. So we did that with Jess on her Christmas record, where we flew Corey Crowder, her producer, to Vancouver and recorded everything there, and then he went back and built the rest of the songs in Nashville, and that's okay with the funding agencies to be able to do that, and it works quite well. It also gives you, again, anytime you can bring a Nashville flavor into any part of the process, it's going to help you. And because it's so competitive now, there really isn't that many Canadian artists that I can think of. I think Brett Kissel might be the only one who's still recording in Saskatchewan. Everybody else is doing pretty much Nashville stuff or portions of it in Nashville with some sort of a Nashville flavor to it. You have to be able to compete.
Yeah, and then I guess with the mixing process too. I mean, if someone wanted to say record at home or record closer to them, just so they don't have to travel or whatever. But have you experienced, they're just, sending it off for mixing in Nashville? Like, would that work as well? Or do you really think that it's important to actually physically go there to record?
I think you need to be in the room. Or your producer has to be with you. And we were talking there in the break in terms of, you went in and recorded songs and felt you weren't a part of the process in terms of getting the final product. So for me, that's crucial in terms of those conversations. The bigger piece is you've got to find the right producer that you click with as well too, because that is reflective of your final product. And if you're on a different artistic wavelength with the producer, it's not going to work. Because at the end of the day, you got to live with these songs for the rest of your life, and it's not something you're proud of or can sing every single night. It just takes the fun out of it. Yeah.
Do you have any recommendations for how artists can seek that right producer, or how they can even know where to start in finding somebody to work with?
I mean, it's really just goes back to relationships that we've been talking about all week. I mean, you just have to develop those relationships. Even if it's your first relationship in Nashville, it has nothing to do with a producer. Like, they know a producer, or the next person you meet through them will know a producer. You know what I mean? Like, I really think it's just building your relationships, whether you're building them from here as well as that you can, you know, to bridge that time between you getting down there for a trip or permanently. Like, it's just about building your relationships. And sometimes it takes a long time, you know, sometimes it takes a while. But it will happen if you put your head down and really focus on your relationships.
Yeah, I think it's the same as anything. Like, you're not going to hit it off with every single songwriter that you write with as well, too, right? It's just not. It just doesn't work. But you're going to find those certain ones where it's just magic, and you click, and that's the beauty of music, is when you do click with somebody, whether it's a songwriter or songwriters or a producer, then you know you feel it. You can feel the buzz of what you're doing.
And also in terms of those first steps when you are looking for a producer, depending on what your genre is and what you're going after, like, listen to what is on the radio, what's working, and find out who all the behind the scenes players are, who wrote it, who produced it, who mixed it, who mastered it, and like use that as a starting point to find something that you like. Like, I like, wow, okay, there's actually 6 songs on the chart that the same producer did, and I like those songs. So like, that's just an immediate stepping stone of like figuring out who you might be into working with.
Yeah, and I guess like attaching a name of a producer like that is also really good for, like, hey, I worked with this producer who has all of these hit songs. That's a huge launching pad. Yeah. Okay. Does anyone have any questions about production now before I move on? Yeah.
Hi, sorry, I got another question. With like the way that country music sounds nowadays, if you look back to like 90s country, as it were, there's a lot of twangy guitars and, you know, catchy licks and that kind of thing. Newer country music, a lot of the stuff that's going on, there's a lot more sampling and, you know, looping and things like that. Is that something that's just kind of a sign of the times? That's kind of what's selling now? Or like, is there, you know, still room out there for that really country, like, you know, twangy sound with like a good solid lick to start the song? Or is it kind of sort of beyond that now?
This kind of goes back to the first part that we started about this morning in terms of not chasing radio and trying to write for what is on radio. I love the idea of checking out who the players are and all the rest of that stuff, but by the time you find it, write it, record it, and get it done, you're going to be 6 months. Everything's going to change again. As far as where country radio is going, from what I see on my side, we have an artist on our roster by the name of Bobby Wills, and Bobby is my traditional hat act that I have, and we are getting ready to release new music, and Bobby is in that traditional vein, and I'm freaking out right now because I don't know. I love him as an artist, and I love the songs that he does. I'm just not sure if we can break through in terms of where country radio is at right now, but I'm not going to alter his style to fit what is on radio. We're fortunate in that we've got some decent relationships at radio, and we may get support on this song because people love him, but it's not what's happening out there right now, and that's a concern for me. But I think it is starting to shift a little bit back. I've been talking to a couple of producers and mixers who are getting away from the finger snaps and the loops and all the rest of that stuff and getting back to more simpler production. So if that starts to happen, then maybe we can start swinging the pendulum back a little bit. The problem is the genre is too damn popular. Everybody wants to be in this genre right now, and that's affecting the overall sound, I feel anyway, from my 2 cents.
I have one comment to that. I really feel, and I don't know how it is up here, but I really feel like the genre is like starving a little bit for and is coming back to like their country roots. Mm-hmm. Not to say like everything's going to sound like Alan Jackson again tomorrow. I don't think like that's going to happen, but I do think artists like John Pardee and a new band named Midland and acts like that, like people are really, really loving, and I really think it's because they're starving for like why everyone fell in love with the format in the first place, and really like going back to like good songs, because a lot of these songs that have been in this bro country genre, which I love bro country, I'm gonna like don't kill me, but I do, but you know, there have been a lot of really good songs, you know, over the last few years, like they're really good, but I think there is like, and being on the forefront of like pitching songs and seeing what artists are reacting to and things like that, like it has gone up 1,000 steps in the song, like the true songs and the craftsmen of songs that people are connecting with, because they're starving for like these story songs that say something that like they really, really are. Like Kenny Chesney just put a song on hold the other day. I am shocked. You know, it's an amazing song, but it's a country song. You know, it's like, whoa, like these, and it's like 2 songwriters that are just craftsmen. Like the demo wasn't anything fancy. You could barely hear the words. We had to send a lyric over for just him to listen to it, you know? So it's like, I was like, whoa, like this is awesome. Like the top artists in our genre are really like connecting back to those songs that like made their careers, you know? Not to say that like these other songs and more poppy things aren't going to be involved anymore. They totally are. Like you have to be progressive enough to keep up. But I don't think like if you're really good at writing really, really country songs, you need to stick with writing really, really country songs, because there aren't a lot of people that do that. And when there are, like when someone's looking for that kind of song, you're going to get the slot, you know?
So I'm just wondering, like in those cases where there's maybe just a really, really good song, but it's not going to fit on radio, are there, like I know that radio is very important to country music, but is there, like with streaming now, is there another way to get those kind of songs heard, and is there any revenue in that, or another sort of like, I don't know, is there like a niche sort of country fan group that likes that kind of stuff?
We're fortunate, again, we have a band on our roster by the name of Black Mountain Whiskey Rebellion, and we are anti-radio. It's awesome. It's so fun because you don't have to play the radio game. And the cool thing for me is I'll go out on a radio tour and I'll actually play the songs for them. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. When do we get that? I'm like, you're never getting it. It's awesome. And everything we have done with this band has been totally organic and totally structured in a way to get the grassroots fan. It's high quality material, but the way that we've gone about doing it is getting it into the tastemakers' hands and letting them run with it. So again, the power of networking. We were in Nashville, Mitch and myself, doing some A&R meetings. We had more A&R interest on this band than any artist I've ever worked with in pop country. And one of the meetings that we got in Nashville was a 20-minute coffee meeting with the editor of Rolling Stone Country. And we gave him one song, and he came back while we were down there and said, I love this, I want to do a feature on the band, and it ended up being one of the 10 new country acts you need to know in the July issue of Rolling Stone. We parlayed that into a meeting with John Marks, who's the head of global country at Spotify. Fell in love with the band, put the track on the Country Rocks Spotify playlist with 160,000 followers. It was the top streaming track in that playlist for 6 weeks. Those streams were not coming from Canada. They were coming from the international market. At the same time that was happening, our media publicity person who works with Big Machine received a phone call when she was at lunch with Mitch from Live Nation saying, hey, the Cadillac 3's coming through Canada on a bunch of dates. Do you know a band that might fit for the opening slot? And Mitch is like, this is and they ended up getting the opening slot. So then they did 6 dates from Montreal through to London on that, and now the conversations are in place to have the band potentially go out with the Cadillac 3 on US dates and through Europe. We're making more money on this band than any artist I have on the roster because we haven't spent any money. Like your upfront costs on advertising, marketing, promotion, media, publicity, radio tours, radio tracker, you're $50,000 a song by the time you're through production and all the rest of that stuff. All we have is production. It's awesome. So we're at 600,000 streams on the first single on Spotify alone with just this grassroots thing, and it's working. And it's and the fans, the people who are talking about this band, are listening to pop country stuff, but they don't care it's not on the radio. Reverse.
Well, that's good news.
It is, actually. It's refreshing a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot of artists within our country world here in Canada that don't all fit into the perfect little, box that we call Canadian country radio. And that's a great example too. And it's knowing from day one what it is you want. Do you want country radio in Canada to play your single and you want to be on the stage and you want to be the next big thing? Or do you want to take that path of being outside of the norm? And there's a lot of artists that have built a living through that. Core Blend is a great example. And there's a lot of artists that I know, like Blake Berglund from Saskatchewan, very, in the grassroots way like that as well. But streaming in the last few years, there's just so many avenues there that are, absolutely amazing and present amazing opportunities. Also within Canada too, I know that there's a question, I might be jumping a little bit, but looking at satellite radio as well. A lot of it, yes, is programmed out of the States, including something like The Highway, a channel like The Highway. But looking at those, because those are such tastemaker opportunities, they're really hard to get. But if you can get on a show like that, or even within Canada, campus radio, something more for like what we're talking about, less maybe on the commercial countryside, but still an important, there's a whole audience there. And CBC as well, something to think about. So
That's been my biggest shift in my mindset of running a label and an artist management company. For years, I would go to Nashville, and it was like, I got to get an artist deal for Jess. I got to get her signed to a label. And you just get the door slammed in your face so many times because they don't want to know for whatever reason. But what happened was I was like, okay, if I can't get the big players to take me seriously, I'm going to start building relationships with the fringe players. And the fringe players at that time when I started doing it was John Marks, who was the music director at Sirius XM, who was playing Cheap Wine and Cigarettes, which was amazing income for us as well, too, if you're fortunate enough to get on there. At the same time that I started buying John $300 lunches at the Palm, I was introduced to Stacey Cato, who was the music director at CMT, who's now been a huge ally in supporting us with video placement, either on the CMT homepage or in some cases on the network. All of a sudden, we're in 35 million homes. That kind of parlayed into John moving to Spotify and developing that relationship, further relationship with him at Spotify at the same time that we're trying to get songs on Sirius XM. Now Apple Music is setting up shop, or has set up shop in Nashville as well too. So my last trip down, I met with the label and product manager there. My idea being that more people, fringe players that I can get on board with my artists and my artist songs, the easier the door is going to open potentially somewhere down the line for the A&R people to finally take us seriously in terms of this is a viable product.
So you're doing this without a label. This is to get labels interested because you're just trying to gain interest from people who are going to get.
Yeah, when I first started going to Nashville and pitching our artist roster, the A&R meetings were 20 minutes. It would take me longer to drive from the hotel to the office, and then I'd be sitting back in the car going, what the hell just happened? But as we've developed and had success in Canada, and I guess my relationships with these people have developed a little bit as well too, those meetings are now getting into an hour long, which is cool because that gives you enough time, one, to relax and settle down and make sure you hit all your points that you want to get across. But they are seriously looking now at us because of what's going on in this country with the talent of Canadian music that we have, and more so now than ever before. And that's why you're seeing, Tennille towns get a direct deal, and High Valley with a direct deal. That's amazing, and that wasn't happening when I first started. They wouldn't consider us at all because there's a wall that is there that doesn't come down. It's starting to come down a little bit, but it's still tough to get over that wall.
So for an artist who doesn't have like a manager on the ground or a label, because I was going to ask about label too, but for an artist who's just doing it on their own, how do they get those meetings with Apple Music or Sirius XM? Is it basically the same thing you're doing? Do you think that those places will actually give them the time of day?
When I first started MDM Recordings and I knew nobody in Nashville, I hired somebody in Nashville to get me those meetings and come with me. It cost me $1,500, but it was well worth it. We got into every A&R office that was there. The person who I hired actually liked the music that I was pitching, which made the whole difference in the world. And a lot of those relationships that I now have with those A&R people and industry people came from that guy that I hired. That's how I did it.
Okay, cool. That's a great
I would
tip.
say, sorry. Am I talking over someone? Okay. I would say, there are some meetings you're just not going to get into at this point when you're, just starting out. I mean, it's just like the reality. I mean, some meeting, I can't get into some meetings, and it's just like, that's my goal. I'm going to try to get there. So what are the steps to get there? But also, even just speaking, I meet with a lot of up-and-coming songwriters or artists, and when we do the meetings all the time, and when they are saying, oh yeah, if I can just get a meeting with this person, I'm just kind of waiting to get this type of meeting, and then I'll be on my way. You know what I mean? That's the worst thing you could possibly say. Never say that. But because like you never want to say like, oh yeah, I'm waiting on them to help me do this so then I can get there. Like, no, absolutely not. Like the more you can do, like even if it's small things, but the more that you can do on your own, that shows that like you're really willing to put in like the dirty work, you know, that like no one honestly even wants to admit that they're doing, but like it's amazing to admit that you're doing like all of that groundwork and getting as far as you can, like with your abilities. That's how you get a partner interested in like when someone's driving for Uber and like waiting and do all this stuff, but still writing like 4 times a week and like writing at night or writing by themselves or trying to work out how to do Pro Tools, or they know this person because of this, you know what I mean? Like honestly, sometimes like the lower it sounds, I'm like, whoa, yes, like this is the type of person I want to work for. Like this is the type of person I want to, like this person, like if you take a chance on them, they will work their ass off to make this work. You know what I mean? Like that's how you get people into what you're doing, and that's how they can get you into a step up of a meeting and stuff like that. But I think always like, and even like I always am like, if I'm waiting on somebody else for me to get something done, like we've been talking about it, like if I have to call in the big guns, you know, for me to get something done, like I'm doing something wrong. Like I need to, what is a baby step that I can make just on my own, no matter how small that is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's good advice. That's what you were saying earlier too.
But I think it and again, it comes back to what we've talked about. It's networking. Yeah. If I don't know Alan, but I know you know Alan, and I'm going to go to you to help me get a direct relationship with him. That's what I did in Nashville. Mm-hmm. That's how I did it. And I guess the other blessing of Nashville is there's so many Canadians that are in Nashville now. Yeah. You're going to know somebody, and they are doing the same thing that you're trying to do. So have a conversation with them. Everybody's willing to talk.
I pride myself on all the Canadians I know. If I don't know one, I'm like, oh, how do you know them? I want to know them.
So yeah, I mean, building relationships is huge. I do know that like a lot of, you know, I meet with artists on a daily basis to consult them, and they're afraid, they're scared to reach out. What do you have to say to them? And is there a way to approach you that isn't gonna, you know, like piss you off, but also, you know, what really impresses you when an artist is reaching out? What should they include? Should it be like their entire life story or a short bio, or just like, here's me live? What's the best way? Maybe I can hear from all of you, because you all have different positions and you're all looking for something different.
Yeah, I mean, for speaking on behalf of some programmers and even from a record label, it's my number one suggestion is do your research. And this is going to what you were saying earlier. Don't send something to a radio station that does absolutely not fit their format. That will just piss them off, because they have a lot of stuff coming at them. So if you want these people, you know, to pay attention to you, do your research and make sure they know that. You know, say things within your, you know, when you're touching base, whether it's via phone, via email, whatever. Say things that make that personal connection. Same thing when you're sending music to a record label, you know, for consideration, or to a radio tracker, independent radio tracker. Do your research on that company. Do you fit in with what they are doing? Do they even do country? Do they even do pop radio? You know, just blanketing things out and sending it is, it just shows laziness.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. Like, do your research. And don't like just blanket everyone that you think you may know, or you just have their email or something. It's always helpful to, you know, have some kind of connection, like, oh, like I love the writer that you work with, so-and-so, and like that song really affected my life, and that's why I'm reaching out, or whatever. There's also a balance between like being persistent, but then just like, oh my gosh, this guy's reached out to me like 10 times, I'm not interested, or, you know, or how to get my info or whatever. I mean, I don't think I'm like Beyonce or anything. Like, people can have my email, it's totally fine. But yeah, I think just always being genuine about it. Like, you can sniff it out, you know, like crazy. Like, if someone's not being genuinely, like they're trying to find some advice, or like trying to really like go after their career and what they're passionate about, like you can like sniff that out, like something's not right here, like you're not being genuine with me. I hate that. Oh my god. But yeah, I think like really trying to just be genuine about connecting with people and sending something to somebody. But that really involves doing your research too. You know, you're not like scheming everyone, but being prepared and being professional too.
For me, it's, I know I want to work with you when I know you don't need me.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
You're going to do it regardless if I come in
Yeah.
and help you go to the next level, and it's still going to happen.
One of the newest artists we're working with, who isn't actually on our official national roster, Mike just said it. I saw something in this kid, and it was something special, and I just knew. And you have the support of the team, right, that either are behind you or they're not, and that comes down to, you know, just relationships on the finite level, like of the, you know, the people I work with that are my music family.
Do you ever get artists who reach out to you who are like, I need an agent, and you're like, yeah, you're awesome, or you probably have to see them live?
Oh,
right?
I think like we were talking about this earlier. I think you'd be surprised how many people don't reach out because they're scared, or like Mike was saying, like for some reason you're put on a pedestal and like unreachable, but we are. I pride myself in my work ethic. I respond to every email I get. Like that's who I am. That's who I am as a person. Thank you. That means a lot. But it's like that's part of me, who I am in my business, right, as a person. So I always make time. Everybody starts somewhere, and I never forget where I came from and the people that mentored me and helped me along the way. And there's not very many of them, I have to be honest. Like I fought long and hard by myself to find my place, and there's always a handful of people that help. So you just, you know, if it's your passion, you find your way.
I listen to everything that comes in, and I try to respond to every email that's sent to me. Where I run into problems and where I get really frustrated, and again, we talked about this earlier on this morning, is when I've told you your baby's ugly and you're still coming at me, like, and I try to give you the proper. Yeah, and you're coming at me still again, and then I've had other people who just say, you're the biggest asshole I've ever met, and then I'm like, well, that's probably why I don't want to work with you. We're not off to a great start here. But that, I'm the same mindset. Had to start somewhere as well too, and I just never forgot, you know, people who helped me along the way, and that's been crucial to building the type of brand that I want to have out in the marketplace, and I want quality to be associated with the brand of MBM Recordings, and so when that logo is going out on anything, people are going to take it seriously and or want to be a part of what we have because of the way that we do things and the way that we've built the company.
What about for you, Emily? Like if people are interested in writing with you, how do they approach you?
Any number of ways. Sometimes it's like, for example, being at the CCMAs is when I connect with a lot of newer and just starting out artists who, you know, might see me play some songs at the Songwriter round and then start to associate me as having written whatever song. And they just come up to me usually after and usually just give me a card and say, hey, like, can I get in touch with you? Can I play you some songs? And I agree with everything that you guys said. Like, many people helped me along the way, and I don't forget that. So when someone reaches out to me, if it's within my power to do something or give you any kind of feedback, like, no problem. And if it's coming from a genuine place, then I feel compelled to do that. But if it's coming from a place where, I mean, I've literally had people reach out to me asking me, like, what's the easy way to get to where you are? Can I skip steps? And I just can't reply to them. Like, I can't bring myself, because if you're looking for the easy way, yeah, it's not happening. There is no easy way in this business. Yeah.
Doesn't exist. No. Would you also say, like, you know, the some yeah.
little red thing
at Staples? And nothing happens.
What was I gonna say? Now I'm all just thinking about the easy button, all the different meanings of that. Yeah, I totally lost my train of thought.
See what I did?
Yeah, see what you did? Okay, well, it doesn't matter. That train of thought's gone now. I'm just seeing my notes here. Oh, no, I remember now. Okay, so a lot of artists, they do reach out and they get a little bit discouraged because they don't get a reply back or like, you know, whatever. And I do try to say like, well, people are really busy and like sometimes they just like open the email and like they're like, I'll respond later. And I basically say like, you do need to be persistent. But where is that line between being persistent and being annoying? You know, how often I think it's good if an artist is wanting to work with somebody, if they kind of just keep them in the loop every few months. Is that okay? Like, how do you all feel about that?
When I was working at an independent radio promo company, I was definitely more involved in the submission side of things. And there's persistence, and it's you know, sending your music and following up and getting those meetings, totally all for that, because things can get crazy, you lose track, and then it's like, okay, let's meet. It's when you get that, you have that, you know, trade of information of, this is my opinion, this is what I think you need to do. You can do whatever you want with that information, take it or leave it. I think usually what, you know, you would say is, you know, if there's enough interest on my side, even if I maybe don't finish what I'm, you know, with, let me know, you know, when you have new music, would love to know how you're developing. I think it's when you have a new project or you have new music, or, you know, or even if you just have a question of, hey, you know, when we met 6 months ago, we talked about this, this, and this. I've lined up some, you know, rights. Can I just get your, you know, suggestion on who I'm writing with or who I'm meeting with in Nashville? And if you build that rapport and, you know, the person's responding and you don't just keep that going, that's not being annoying. I think what's kind of what we were saying before, where it's like you say the baby's ugly and then you are attacking and you are coming at. And there are people that do that to, you know, people sitting here and to programmers. And it's not having that bad attitude, because also not everybody's right and you're not right for everybody. So just because I say, you know, you don't fit in with what we're doing as far as radio or whatever, that doesn't mean someone else isn't going to take you and do a great job. So, you know, it's kind of a long-winded answer for that. But
I just hate when you do take the time to respond, and if it is an ugly baby conversation, and then they send you more ugly babies. Like they don't listen to anything that you've said, and they send you more going, and I'm like, that's when I get really annoyed. But we also talked this morning about being able to feed off of no's, the answer no. Mm-hmm. And this is a great Ron Kitchener story. I love Ron to death now, but we're competitors. And in the early day, I was on one of my first trips to Nashville. We were at the stage. They were doing a global artist showcase, and I had an artist that was on the bill. And I was like, Ron, I'd known Ron through my association with him at Universal Music when he was managing Jason McCoy. And I was like, hey, I'm in Nashville for the week, Ron. Can I just have an hour of your time, go for a coffee, grab a beer? I just want to pick your brain about the Canadian country music industry and all the rest of that stuff. And he looked at me and said, did nobody tell you that CDs don't sell anymore? And he walked away. And I never got the meeting. And I'm like, I'm going to beat you one day. I'm going to beat you. And when I do, I am going to tell you when I beat you. And a couple of years later, we got our market share to 6.75%, which was 1/100% more than what Open Road Recording was. And I'm like, I beat you. I used it as motivation. And I have a great relationship with Ron now, but that is... that's the power of no. I used it as motivation as opposed to just getting pissed off and discouraged. Like, it hurt my feelings at the time, but I was like, I'm going to beat you.
Cool.
yeah, it's like we were saying before, like I don't want to repeat what I'm saying, but it's Mike is Mike, Ron is Ron, I'm me, we are who we are. We know what we want to work with or what we can work with, what we like and what we don't like. And, you know, if you approach somebody and they say no, it's exactly that. And I did miss the first panel, but, it sounds like you guys were talking about that, where it's just take it to the next and take it to the next, take it to the next, take that, but take the feedback as well. Don't, don't just take the no and go, well, you're wrong, I'm going to the next person. Do consider what they're saying, but there's so many stories of artists. Was it Carly Pierce? She was dropped from one of her labels, and then all of a sudden the big machine picks her up and they release, every little thing. And it's like there was a lot of no's there, and a lot of people said, we're good, you know? So.
I love when I'm wrong. Like, I love when I see an artist that I've passed on make it. I get pissed off because I'm like, damn, I missed it. But there's factors that lead into that decision in terms of artists that I have passed on that I wish I hadn't, but at the time I had to, whether it's too many artists on the roster or we just didn't have the resources to be able to go after that. I hate that. But it's a part of the business as well, too. So
I also will add, great example with the Carly story. And I love what Allison Jones at Big Machine said when Carly, she heard every little thing from Carly, because Carly's been grinding for years and had a record deal, and it didn't turn out like everyone had thought. But Allison was like, she found her 3 minutes, and I love, that gives me goosebumps. Oh my God, I just got goosebumps. And she did, like, you know, and like one song can change it all. And like that song is like, I mean, I don't know about guys, but it's every girl's like anthem of my life. Like, yes, I remember that. But it's like she found her 3 minutes. It was one song that changed it all for her. And now like she really, it's looking promising, and it's looking great for her. Not that it fixes everything, but it definitely, like, a song can change everything. And that's coming from like a publisher. I mean, that's kind of my bread and butter, but like the right song can change it all for anyone, you know. And she was dropped from a label and everyone was like, oh yeah, that didn't work out. No, you know, she like found her 3 minutes, and then now it's really looking good for her, and they're working really hard. So
Cheap Wine and Cigarettes changed my life. It was the best 3 minutes of my life. I didn't write it. I didn't really have anything to do with it, but it changed Jess's life. Certainly changed mine as well too, because it just put her career into the stratosphere in Canada.
I think what people tend to forget sometimes too is, we always talk about the overnight successes, but even when we're just talking about the songs before the song, and people forget, like even working with Jess at that time, the amount of singles we put out before that. They were incredible. It was, yeah, and there was a lot of there was a good chunk that we released, but you associate typically when you know it's the song that hits. But there are usually a lot of songs before that. It's rare for the first one just to make it happen, so.
Yeah, I think like the perception out there in the world is that these are overnight successes, but I think overnight success isn't a thing. It's like everyone else is working behind the scenes for like 5 to 10 years to make that happen.
Well, it's easy for, I see a lot of artists get really frustrated with radio, Canadian country radio right now. And we're talking about the challenges, but it is very easy to get mad and get frustrated and say, well, so-and-so is shooting up the chart. Why can't I? There are so many factors that play into why or why not your song is played. But it's not everyone's time at that time. And just because so-and-so at this point of their career is shooting up the chart, it doesn't mean everyone else is supposed to. So it's very easy to get caught up and lost in all of that. And it's something that, especially with newer artists, I'm always trying to steer them away from. It's good to be aware, but don't get lost in that and don't resent that. If it's not working for you at that time, evaluate, find out why, do the best you can to find out why, but don't let it discourage you to the point where it's, everyone's against me. There's a lot of people out there that can just point the finger back and say radio is against me.
When you are pitching to radio, do they give you feedback on those songs that you can share with the artist, or?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of personalities out there that program radio. You deal with a lot of different people. There's a small percentage. How do I put this? Can you turn that camera off too? There's a lot of stations program their stations in a different way. We were kind of talking about this yesterday. You have your group of stations that are going to program by their gut and are going to tell you right away how they feel. And there's those trusty programmers that if you bring them that song from day one, you know what they're going to say. The best part is, though, just because when you bring that song and they say no, doesn't always mean that's it. There's been a lot of programmers that have been wrong and will admit it down the road. But then you have your stations that program, okay, you have this group that will hopefully add your song. It's a small group right out of the box because they love it. That brings you to a certain level, and then there's another group of stations that will start considering you once you start bubbling in that spot. Once you start getting those, then you're going to get the next level, and it goes in tiers. But within there, I think there's a trusty handful that you're going to get that honest feedback from, but it's from there that you want to, you manage your way through it. And, you know, some of the feedback, you take it, and some of it you're like, okay, thank you. But
I got two trains of thought. For the independent artist and who, if you're fortunate enough to have developed a relationship with your regional music director or program director at the station, I know a lot of independent artists do this. They're so excited. They take in their 4 or 5 songs, and then it's like, which song would you release as a single? And if you're doing this to 2 or 3 other music directors and program directors, I will guarantee you, if you're playing them 5 songs, each one will pick a different song. So then you decide on which single you go with, and you've already pissed off the other 2 music directors because you didn't pick their song. So when we go out on radio tours now, I may play 3 Jess Moskaluk songs, but they have no input on the direction of which ones are going to be singles. Where I struggle with Canadian country radio is when you get, I'll use Jess. I have 2 classic examples of Jess. We were top 3 with Drive Me Away, which was the lead-off single from Past the Past. First female to go top 5 in 8 years, and we had one station that would not play that song, and it cost us number 1. That pisses me off. And we just went through it again on Camouflage, her latest single, where we had a lot of people who said no. They didn't like the vocal. They felt that they couldn't understand the bridge and the chorus of what she was singing because it's very wordy and it's very quick. And I took that feedback and we went back and we pumped up the vocals. We got all of the no's converted to a yes. We cracked top 10 with the song, and we still had a radio station that would not add the song. And I was like, at a certain point, how can the whole country be saying yes and you be standing there as the lone person saying no? I don't understand that. That bothers me. Twice? No, it wasn't. No. But this person was no from the very beginning. Like, I do not like this song.
No, yeah, that's where these personalities are coming in. There's so many personalities that work in this format, that program, that have the keys to your success at those stations. But it is important to take their feedback, but sometimes it takes a while. I think sometimes it takes the life of an entire single, whether you chart in the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, or top 20 or whatever. If you haven't hit your goal, you go back and reevaluate. Sometimes you don't really get the full picture until after the life of that song is done, and you're able to go, okay, what happened here? I'm saying that because sometimes I feel like there are some people out there that don't want to give you a full opinion, and I wonder, like, that's why it's so important to get to know your local stations. So have the support at home before anything, because those people are going to have your back. And it's as you go beyond that, if you have them in your corner, whether or not they're playing your song, but they're in your corner supporting you, that's what, if you're in Winnipeg and you move further east, those programmers are going to be asking and wanting to know, right? And what what your home is saying. Are you being supported at home? And that builds a little more momentum, but a little more trust and, acceptance. It's still hard.
And I think as you're developing as an artist, your chart position is indicative of how much work you're putting into it. So I'll go back to Jess on Cheap Wine and Cigarettes. It's the biggest song of her career, probably the biggest song she'll ever have in her career, and we never went top 10. We crapped out at 11 on that song, right? We could not get it into top 10 because it was the third single that was really starting to work for her. If we had released that single 6 or 7 down, maybe we go top 10, maybe, but maybe we don't get the sales that we had when we did it. So there's interesting paradigm there as well too. But my point being that it was relatable to just where we were in the phase of artist development with Jess at that point.
Do you think that has anything to do with her being a female artist in the sign of the times, like
well,
that whole?
I think Jess, and maybe I'm biased, but I think Jess has been the first female through the wall in Canada, and the one that has had to break down a lot of those barriers for the other females that are coming through. I think that had a something to do with it. I mean, I look back at the first female artist win that we did with Jess years ago, which was centered around cheap wine and cigarettes. And even though, again, this is where the industry buy-in thing, and this is so important. We had a massive song in cheap wine and cigarettes, and we could not get a slot on the television show. I'm like, what is wrong with you people? And eventually I got a bunch of other people to rally the troops to where we finally got a 3-minute slot on the television show, which was, we had to cut something out of the song to fit the 3 minutes. But I was like, that's just how hard it is. It's so hard. And even as you get more successful, it's just a different hard. It never gets easy. It never gets easy. And I think, we've talked a lot about success, and I'll speak pretty candidly here. In 2016, our label had 7 top 10 singles. And it was every Chad Brownlee song we released went top 10. Jess Moskaluk, Bobby Wills, we were on a roll. It was, yeah, it's Chad Brownlee. Of course it's going to go top 10. Yeah, it's Jess Moskaluk. This year, we have gone through more artist departures from our roster than Air Canada has had flights. And I could see it coming. I could see this downward spiral we were going to go into. And when you hit the bottom of it, you were like, man, we're a long ways away from where we were. I wish I would have celebrated the successes that we had when they were happening that I took for granted. Yeah, and it's hard. So we're on the other side of it now, and it was a valuable learning experience for me, because this industry is peaks and valleys, and as much as you'd like to think that you're going to stay at the top, it's hard to do. It's hard to do.
That's why I find it so exciting to work with emerging artists. Like, I'm really passionate about it, and even though I work for a national agency, predominantly country label acts signed, it inspires me every day when I watch for it, I look for it, it excites me every day, So don't ever lose faith or hope as an artist.
Yeah, I think this is like all really great. We're actually doing a workshop in a couple weeks on validation and managing expectations. Just, because artists, emerging artists, they see people at this level and want to be there, but maybe don't understand that people at that level still aren't happy, or they wish that they didn't, ruin other things in their life to get there, or whatever it is. So I think it's really great for everyone to hear that, and to just sort of identify that just because you become more successful, it just doesn't get any easier.
But that, it does. It's way harder, because it's harder to climb back up once you're coming through the valley and you get to the other side.
Has to be that much higher.
Yeah, but for me, it was just, I try not to burn any bridges, and even though we were on a downward slide and things weren't happening, and I was totally frustrated, even with songs we were releasing. And we went back into a tailspin again with Jess on this album. We had Drive Me Away, which went 3. We released the next song. It didn't do very well. We released the next song. It did even worse. So now I'm like, my biggest artist on the roster is in the tank, and we're in a hole. We got to figure out how to get out of this. And fortunately, we've been able to do that. And then with what's happening with David and the direction that he's going, and a couple of new signings, I'm like, okay, this I know why I'm back in the game. But I lose passion just the same way as everybody else does when it's just things are not happening. It's awful. So I can certainly relate from that point of view.
Well, and everything cycles too, right? Like, it doesn't matter what it is in life. It's so nobody stays at the top forever. So I think you always have to be open and receptive to anything new. And I think as professionals, what it is that keeps the cycle churning, right? Is the new.
Yeah, I go for a lot of walks.
We have about
It's less of a question, more of an observation, I think, on my part. I'm an artist, a singer-songwriter, and I think for me, how I talking about managing expectations is that I don't. For me, the sign of success is not the next radio thing. Then it's not the next award or the next hopefully sold out show. I think for me, success is a daily venture, and I saw that because if that's your sign of success, those markers, you're living a lot of times not being successful. A lot of days in between where you're like hoping to get that thing. So for me, my success has never been in those things. It's been nice when I've gotten some traction in certain things and getting a nomination, here and there. Those are really great signs of like you're on a good path. But I think for me, I don't wait for those things to be my sign of success in this industry. I think you have to kind of every day seek something that's going to make you happy today. So you're not, otherwise you're going to depressed 363 days a year or something, right? And wishing that you can find that next level of success. So that's just my own perspective as we're having this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, some of like those milestones that you have in your head is like, once I hit this, then everything will be great, are total bullshit. Because once you hit those milestones, you wake up the next day and you're still exactly who you are. Nothing has changed. Yes, you might be like starting to progress a certain amount, but it's still life. So make sure that like your daily life, your soul is being filled up and that you're still having fun with what you're doing, because those milestones don't change who you are.
I wish I had all of you here in a couple weeks for this next panel that I'm doing. This is great. Do you have anything to add?
Meds?
I'm a walker too.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Because I think this is probably a great place for us to wrap it up, even a few minutes early, unless there's something really pressing. No? Okay. So before you go, there are some little surveys on the front table. It would just be, you don't have to do it, but it's really awesome when people can fill those out and let us know what was good, what didn't work, what else you'd like to see in terms of panels in the future. That's how we program things for your needs. So please fill those out. They're totally anonymous unless you want to sign your name. And what else? There's a lot of food. We have sandwich bags, so if anyone wants to take some food home, please do. Otherwise, we'll figure out a good use for it. But please stick around for a little bit to eat. And lastly, I would just like to thank all of you for coming all of this way to share your expertise with us and to mingle and network with our artists and music industry professionals here. Thank you so much for everything. And now we all get to go party at the word show.
Nap first.
Nap first. That's right. Go get your beauty rest. Yes. So thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.